guys walked in here, I'm looking at you right in the eye, and I can see right deep in your pupil, and I know what kind of traumas you have, and I know what kind of energy you have in you. I know how grounded you are. I know how steady you are. I know the kinds of decisions that you would be likely to make. I don't know random obscure things like your birthday or your star sign, nor do I care to, but your general energy, I can see it. I can look right in your eye. I know what you're thinking, okay? I'm in there, okay? I'm in your head. So that being the case, what I want to do is I want to get you thinking a lot about that. Now, I'm going to give you some kind of base level reasons why as far as dating goes, but then I'm also going to give you some other reasons why as far as success in your life, okay? As far as dating, the major reason why is because one of the major attractants in dating is the desire for the other person's validation and approval. Now, the fear of loss of somebody else's validation and approval is such a high aspect in dating that if you ignore this aspect, you're completely messed up. Now, here's where most of you guys are going wrong. A lot of you know how to walk up and talk to somebody, maybe keep a conversation going, right? That's sort of the first level. You've got to learn how to walk up to someone, get a conversation going, keep the conversation going. And that, for people that are more comfortable with themselves, they'll learn that in a day or two. For people that are not comfortable with themselves, that'll take maybe 2 to 3 years. It just depends on the level that you're coming from, right? Because for some people, just walking up and starting a conversation is really not a big deal. But for a lot of us, we get approach anxiety, we get flipped out, we don't know how to keep talking, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that's the first barrier that you're going to cross when learning how to meet people. The challenge is that a lot of people get stuck at that point and they still don't actually improve their results in dating. And the reason why is because they have not internally validated yet. They want that other person's validation, and because of that, the other person knows that they're pre-validated, and it kills attraction. It is the biggest attraction killer that you'll see. So even if you know how to go and approach and talk to people, or you know how to, get people laughing or keep the conversation going, if you're looking to them for validation or to validate your reality, you're not going to have a very wild, kinky dating life. You're going to have it could be wild and kinky, but it'll be you and your laptop and a bottle of hand cream. It's going to be very wild and crazy, okay? So we've got to get this down for you. Very, very important. And this is where things get a little bit dicey, because we can teach you how to go and meet people. We can teach you how to strike up conversation. We can even teach you how to get everybody like laughing and flirting, things like that. But unless you're internally validated and grounded in yourself, you're going to continually be losing people out of your life. And the reason why is because what happens is that you're not internally validated, okay? You lack that internal centeredness. And the thing is, you've got to really cultivate this, because when you meet the person who you really like, let me put it to you this way. If this is well cultivated, if you haven't cultivated it, when you meet the person you really like, you're going to be a 0 out of 100. If it's very well cultivated, when you meet the person you really like, you'll be like a 30 out of 100. You're still not going to be your full self, because you have outcome. Anytime that you have outcome or desire, you can't be your full self. Like, if I come up to the front of this room, I want to do a great event for you guys, but if I care too much about your approval, I can't be myself. So the vibe that I want to give you, say as a speaker, ideally, is that I'm going to do a great job, but if you walk out the door, I'm okay with it. Do you guys feel that right now as I'm speaking to you, that I'm enjoying this? I think you're super cool. I want to help you, but if you walk out the door, my life will continue either way. Do you get that sense? Yeah. That's the vibe that you have to have. It's like it's not about, some people say you got to be a jerk, right? They'll say, oh, you should be a jerk. I don't believe that. I think that's a misnomer. To me, what it is, it's about becoming grounded and centered inside of yourself, because then you're not overly validating the other person too much. So you've always got to be building your foundation of abundance. Just say the word abundance. Abundance. Okay, presence. Ease. Happiness. Joy. Passions. Purpose. Okay, so you want to be always just building that foundation. You want to get it to where you're so much the hero of your own movie that if you meet somebody else you like, you're very excited by that person, but you don't need that person. And that is what will keep the tension there, and that is what will keep attraction there. I want to put this in perspective for you, that you could be the perfect person for the person who you like. Literally, the best person they will ever meet in their life. But if you are over-validating and there's nothing left, because there's just nothing left for them to chase or for them to kind of think about how to get the validation from, you will not wind up with that person. no matter how much money you make, no matter how successful you are, no matter how funny you are, no matter how good social skills you have, you could have every good quality in the world going for you. But I promise you from the bottom of my heart that if you care too much about their validation, they will feel that. It will destroy sexual tension, and here's what will happen. You have something called reticular activation system, RAS. Say the word RAS. RAS. So what will happen is that RAS is basically you have the full picture, right? RAS is the full picture. Then think about all the hundreds of attributes that you have, right? Now, let's say that like 95 of them are good, and let's say that 5 of them are bad, right? If that person is pre-validated, what will happen is their RAS will zoom to your 5 negative traits and will focus on those, and it will actually obscure the 95 good traits that you have. Let me give you an example. Look, I'm going to say something kind of messed up. Every girl in the world has a mustache. Do you guys know that? Okay, they actually do. Okay, except the girls here. Except for the girls in this room that do not poo, do not fart, do not sweat, and do not have a mustache. Every girl in the world eventually is going to have a mustache. They wax it, or they bleach it, or they do whatever else, right? Just like how guys, we have grooming stuff too. That's completely normal, right? Have you ever had it where you're so attracted to someone, and then right after you hooked up with them, suddenly you start seeing like little hairs on their lip, or like a little zit, and you can't stop looking at it? Have you ever had that happen? Right? Put your hand up if you resonate with that. Okay, so that's what happens. So that's why they teach women, don't hook up with the guy right away, right? Get him super invested. Get him where he's jumped through so many hoops that when he has that wake-up call, he's jumped through so many freaking hoops that he's like, well, there's a weird zit and a mustache, but damn it, I'm in so much time and energy and focus in this that I can't just walk away over this. So that's why if you have a daughter, what do you tell her? You say, don't just hook up. If you want to hook up with a guy, go do it. But if you want him to stay, there's a reason not to do that, right? It's a validation aspect, right? So as good parents, like if you have a daughter and a son, you want to teach your daughter, like if you want him to be your man, you don't necessarily want to hook up right away. Likewise, if you have a son, you want to say, don't just give away all your power and your soul to somebody who you don't know that well yet. Don't just give all yourself away. You have to stay connected to your inner groundedness, right? Or you'd say that to your daughter. You'd give the same advice to everybody. This is really just healthy advice in general, okay? And it revolves around this concept of reticular activation system and what it is that you're focusing on. So the thing is, a lot of guys will try to make more money, or they'll try to get in better shape, they'll get better social skills, et cetera, but unless you've handled that inner groundedness and you've built a foundation, ultimately what's going to happen is you could meet someone who you really like, and you're still going to blow it, and you're going to act in ways that are not yourself. You're not going to be in your full power. You're not going to be in your full power no matter what when you meet someone you really like. The reason why is because they're a needle in a haystack. You're always at your best when you're in abundance, right? So the second that you go into scarcity, you're not as witty, you're not as sharp, you're not as grounded in yourself. What'll happen is like say someone who you don't really care, you can take it or leave it. You'll make little funny jokes. You'll be like, shh, stop. And then they're like, oh, you're so funny, and they think you're hilarious, right? But when you care too much, you're like, shh, don't leave, right? And then you can't be, right? You care too much, right? Or they can make wild demands, and you're like, I'm not gonna, okay, right? And you'll say yes because you have too much scarcity. You're not in abundance. So what you have to do is you have to be very clear on building a foundation, but also having boundaries. No matter how much you like the person and you want to give them the world, at a certain point there has to be a boundary there. And if you fail to have that boundary, then what's going to happen is you're going to start giving more and more of yourself away. And if you give more and more of yourself away, I promise you this, the end result of giving too much of yourself away, it is a dark, dark path. I've done it before, okay? I had an ex once who was like the sweetest person in the world, and then she just started to get really, really crazy, and I kind of felt bad for her for the things she's dealing with. And because she'd been so loyal in the past, I really wanted to try to help her. And what happened in my case was as I kept giving more and more of myself away, I didn't even know who I was anymore. I no longer knew who I was as a man. So, and you can see yourself doing this to a little bit of a degree, right? It's like, say that you kind of bought someone a really expensive dinner that you didn't want to, you know what I mean, right? And you don't feel good, because I think it's great to take people for dinner, don't get me wrong. But if you're doing it in a way where you weren't comfortable doing it, it wasn't joyful for you, it was something that you did for approval. If you did it because you want to go eat, and it's fun for you to go do it, that's a 1,000% different thing. But if you did that just because you wanted something, you feel yourself give a little bit away. And what happens right after you buy the dinner, what happens? You feel a little bit more nervous. Then you go do another thing that was outside your boundaries, you feel a little bit more nervous. And now what's happening is you're doubling down, not on yourself, but on the other person. And as you double down more and more on the other person, you're turning that other person into your foundation, right? And as they become your foundation, now they have control over your emotions, like a remote control. Who here has been in a situation where you gave away a little bit too much of yourself to someone you're dating, and it got to the point where as you double down and double down, double down, you want their approval so bad they had a remote control of your emotions? Put your hand up if you ever experienced that. Okay, it's pretty crazy, right? Now, in a relationship, there's something called making yourself vulnerable. So say that after me, making yourself vulnerable. So what that means is that if you meet somebody who you trust, here's what you don't want to do, here's what you do want to do. Generally speaking, if somebody is too quick to let down their boundary, oftentimes that is the result of what's called a personality disorder, okay? So it could be anything from codependence to things like borderline personality disorder or things like that, where what happens, they let their boundaries down a little too quick. Now, sometimes that's just going to happen, and it's like lightning strikes. But generally speaking, when that happens, what it is that there could be a problem there, right? So generally, the way people get to know each other is each person lets down their boundary a bit more. Now, the problem is, in our society, what have we also learned? We've also learned always be independent, always, don't rely on somebody else, don't wind up like this complete train wreck, right? We've all heard the horror stories, things like that. Well, the problem with that is it's also breaking down the family in modern society. Are you guys seeing how it's breaking down our family units? So it's not about never making yourself vulnerable, right? You can be, okay, here's the basic way it works. On the lower level, you have codependence, okay? Say the word codependence. Okay, that's 0 plus 0 equals 0. Say this with me. 0 plus 0 equals 0, okay? You're codependent. In other words, you need them to give you constant validation. They need you to provide constant validation. And because of that, there's going to be a lot of fighting because ultimately, the other person can never provide all the validation the person needs. So that's a very common way that we start off in an evolutionary sense. The next step that we see is called independence. Say this after me, independence. Now that's where 1 plus 1 equals 2. And so what happens is, you're willing to see the other person if it's fun, like, if they're kind of bringing some value, you're willing to offer value. But as soon as the other person maybe has a problem, or as soon as it inconveniences you to be with them, you're like, hey, wait, no, that inconveniences me, I'm about myself. And the reason why is because you're not willing to make yourself vulnerable, so you're not going to open up you're not going to expose yourself to having your foundation being opened up into basically being intermingled with another person, okay? But that will still be 1 plus 1 equals 2. Now, by the way, if you've been very, very hurt in a previous relationship in codependence, you're probably going to be independent for a while because you're afraid, okay? You're afraid of being hurt. Now, from there, what you do is you build your foundation. And then the final paradigm is called interdependence. Say this after me, interdependence. Okay, and say 1 plus 1 equals 11. Okay, now that's based off the law of what's called synergy. Say the word synergy. So synergy is basically the idea that human beings, we have this incredible capacity to work together to build things that we could never build on our own. It's actually where our main strength is. So the way that it works is that the human mind will morph and kind of build itself in these specialized areas. So for example, I'm a public speaker. So I can go do all the research on this, and then whatever job you're doing, you could master that. So you let your brain master your job, I'll let my brain master my job. By the way, did I see you in Los Angeles yesterday? Okay, I'm freaking out. He was at my event in LA yesterday. Okay. What city are we in? Okay. So what? Yeah, you're like looking at me. You're like, this is normal, right? I'm like, so what you have is interdependence. You work on your job. You get really good at it. I'll work on my job. I get really good at it, and then I can save you time and make you move ahead more quickly, right? Just think of maybe as an example what you've learned from my YouTube videos. Well, it took me 20 years to figure that out. I had to not do a bunch of other things because for those 20 years that I took to figure it out, I could just put that out and you can get the information. That's the whole idea. And then there's ways that you guys all support society that allows me to function. I don't want to have to learn how to build a subway. I don't want to learn how to have to build a restaurant. I don't want to learn how to build a cell phone. I want to make it where other people do that. So really, the greatest team in all of history is men and women, okay? Men and women are literally the single greatest team in all of history. We're meant to be synergistic. But we frustrate each other, don't we? Right? We frustrate each other because, again, when you open up your foundation and it's with the wrong person, they can really hurt you and run you through the gutter and you get messed up. By the way, I want to say for anybody in here who's gay, also the greatest team can be 2 gay people. And also anybody here who identifies as an animal, can be animal. And anybody here who identifies as anything in the world, you're a great team too. Now, and literally mean that. I'm joking, but I mean it. Now, so to continue on, what you have is where you can create synergies, right? But the thing is, what we have to do first, before we can get to the point where we're ready to create a synergy with somebody else, we have to build our own foundation. Now, here's the other aspect of this. Once you're at a highly evolved level, you're not as afraid to get in a relationship because you know that you wouldn't get hurt, okay? See, what'll happen is in codependence, you're desperate to get into a relationship. You're desperate because you're needy. You need your needs met all the time. In independence, you actually don't want to get in a relationship because you've been hurt and you're afraid that you could devolve back into codependence, and you know the nightmare that is, because most people that have been codependent have had this like nightmare situation that can go for like months and months, where you have a bad breakup or a bad relationship, and it can literally turn your life into a living hell. Now, as you evolve through that and you build your foundation properly, you're grounded, you're on your passion, you're on your purpose, et cetera, then what happens, you're not really afraid to get in a relationship anymore, because you can make yourself vulnerable, but you can also dial it back in within 2 seconds, right? It's like you can open up and be in love or connect with somebody, but if it's not healthy and it's not something that's benefiting you, you can also pull that back and go back to being single. And that's everything from knowing how to meet new people, and meeting other people who are attractive, so you're not stuck in some scarcity on one person. It could mean things like your passions, your hobbies, your family, things that make you laugh, and all that kind of stuff, and also inner work, okay? So that you can see now, between all these different aspects, why is inner work so important? It's a combination, A, that to initially attract somebody, you cannot be over-validating them in a codependent way, because it kills attraction and it messes up sexual tension. Then from there, it also makes it to where you can't even get in a relationship safely without getting totally messed up unless you have your foundation down. So I would actually be curious to see in this room, I think most people come to us because they've been in codependence and are moving into independence. There's gonna be, because the pyramid's like this, right? There's always gonna be more people at the base of the pyramid or in the middle of the pyramid than at the top of the pyramid. So how many of you guys in here, I want you to be very honest, okay? No judgment, I'm just curious. And I would ask, how many of you here feel that you're still probably grappling with some degree of codependence, to where, if you're being honest, a big part of you just wishes someone would just come and love you and, like, you know, just solve all your problems for you. Put your hands up if you feel that way. Okay, who here is at a point where they're more in independence? They're maybe enjoying dating, they're building their foundation, they're kind of working through that. Okay, who here is at a point where their foundation, and feel free to brag, because I'd just love to have some examples. Is there anybody in here who feels like their foundation is strong enough that they are ready to be in an interdependent situation? Put your hand up. So it's less people, right? So it's going to be less. It's always a pyramid, right? The base of the pyramid is going to be the biggest, the middle is going to be the next, and the top is going to be the smallest, okay? And this is why at every level, you're going to see people say different things, right? People in codependence are going to say love is everything. You know, I can't live without love. I'm going to die if someone doesn't love me, et cetera, et cetera. People in independence are like, I'm just going to date. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to do what I want. You know, and if they don't like it, I'm out the door, right? If they annoy me, I'm out the door. People in independence will always brag about all the people they dump. You ever see that on Instagram? They're constantly bragging about everyone they're breaking up with. Okay, a lot of my female friends do this. Every day they've got these new memes up talking about guys they dumped, how they have high standards, they're not gonna let a guy get away with all this bad stuff. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, so you're basically just revealing that you're working on becoming independent. You're basically admitting that you still have a reactive relationship to codependence. You're still in a reaction to the codependence, in effect, right? Because, like, I'm pretty comfortable, I have boundaries, but that doesn't mean that I'm gonna post a meme on Instagram every day like, you're out the door, you better step up. You know, I'm like, why would I be talking about this? Like, you know, so in my own case, you know, I don't have a reactive relationship to it because I've moved past it. It's not something I'm thinking about anymore. It's like you'll see certain guys that are angry at women. I'm like, you're angry at women because you have like a broken soul. Like, literally, like why are you letting some cute little creature, I mean, I don't know, is that a sexist term? I don't know. Okay, why are you letting some brilliant, heroic superhero that is better than men, why are you letting this superhero mess you up, right? Why are you letting this perfect, flawless entity mess you up? It's because, and it's literally because you're at the mercy, right? Somebody who hates another person or hates a gender is pathetic. They're literally pathetic. They're a joke. The fact that you've got to trash or bag on another, whether that's women bagging on men or men bagging on women, it just shows that you're a broken little soul. You've been hurt, and then you're just clumping an entire gender into that, no different than racism. And basically you just like, you're like just too mentally weak, and you can't just see every person as an individual person, but instead what you do is you have to just clump them in because you can't even determine a reality because you're pathetic. And that's okay to be pathetic because you're pathetic and you're on your journey, and we're gonna fix it, and that's why we're right here, okay? So you came to the right place, right? You can be, it's okay to, yeah. So, okay, so that's the main idea of like getting to a point where you're safe enough in yourself that you can make yourself a little bit vulnerable, or you can put yourself out there, but you're not, and yeah, it might hurt for a minute if it doesn't go well, but it's not gonna torment you for months and months, right? Like for me, right now, if I have a breakup, it hurts for a couple hours. Like, yeah, I'll be very sad for a couple hours, and then maybe for a day or two, I'm like, oh, that's too bad that that ended, and I'll reflect on what I would have done better. But then I just go on with my awesome life. I'm not gonna be floored by it. But me back in the day, if I had a really bad breakup, that could be months that I was dwelling on it because I hadn't established that proper foundation yet, right? Or if I meet somebody I really like, I compromise myself too much. And so this is why we wanna have that foundation. Like I said, we wanna get it to where A, it'll increase a lot of attraction and tension between you and the person that you like, but also it makes it where you're even capable of opening up eventually. This is gonna be very important because, like, let me just ask you a simple question. How many of you in here wanna have a family someday? Put your hands up if you wanna have a family someday. So for all of you that wanna have a family someday, this is an important thing to get through, because when you do come in with your partner who you'll have children with, or, you know, or if you're non-children family, but whatever it is, you've got to be at a point where you're ready. So you want to be preparing through this, and dating and working on your dating is a time that you can really start to work this stuff out and sort of get on top of it and kind of come into your own, so that when you do have that amazing opportunity, you can seize it and not blow it apart, okay? So that's the basic thing. Now, what I want to do, I like to ground everything to reality, okay? I like grounding it to reality. So what I might even do, I might even have some women in the audience come up and just give a little bit of their perspective or share how they feel about what it means to experience somebody who's grounded. That doesn't mean you have to listen to every word someone says or take it. Like, just because someone's a woman doesn't mean that they're the ultimate arbiter. But do you think that it might be valuable at least to kind of hear it, to ground this a little bit? I could maybe call up some girls from the audience? Yeah. Okay, all right. So I'm going to call up my friend Anna, actually. Okay, she was at my last free tour, and she's a good friend of mine, so I'll call her up. Could you guys give her a hand? She'll come up and talk about it a bit. And so, you know, so we've been kind of chatting on this, and she had a lot of take on it. So I think it's just good to hear like these ideas from multiple sources. Maybe you could share some of your experience on this. Could we get some chairs up here too? May not need it, but just good to have them.
Yeah, for sure. So first off, hi everyone. It's good to see you all here. Glad that you're here for self-development. And Owen is a master at groundedness, where he's not functioning where he's in reaction, because a lot of us, we function in reaction, you know, whether it be if you're working from a corporate environment or whichever environment you're in. But we tend to have a scenario that affects us, and then from there we just think, oh my gosh, like, I'm going to let this affect me. But to have a successful life, I think, it starts from the function of where you're functioning from within, and you're having this platform that it's not reactive to anything in the physical, it's not material, or it's not materially based. So a lot of us, we act from this foundation of thinking, oh my gosh, like, we have to have this goal, we have to have this need met. And in truth, do we really? Because what is life in the end? We go away and, you know, sure, some of us are remembered in history, and we have these moments of grandiose accomplishments in life, but how many people actually know that? You know, will the whole world ever know you completely? Probably not. So when you're functioning from this reality of, I am here myself and I am this energy, you're becoming a conductor where you're not just having, like, you're not letting something from the region in your exterior come into you and then like slam you and then affect you and like bring you down. Where it's like, if let's say there's something bad that happens to you in life, you let that pass, you feel it, it affects you, but you don't necessarily have it just like completely take you down. And that's actually what Owen and I touched upon, where in life, I think if we want a great successful world, it'll be huge if people just function together, where, you know, we're just in synergies and growing in that way.
Yeah, I wanted her to talk about it because she's like the Zen master. She's kind of funny. Like, when you're around her, everybody comments on her, right? I just threw her up here because I thought it'd be fun to kind of throw her in the deep end. But basically, one thing I've noticed in her is when she walks around, she's not socially pinging a lot off of her environment. And that's because she seems to be very grounded in her journey of life, right? So do you have any insight for a lot of the guys here? Like when you, as a woman, and not being like a dick, but like as a woman, when a guy comes up to you who lacks in that foundation, how do you experience, because I know that you're not judging them bad, but how do you experience them? I want to really ground this so they can really, because if I come up here as a guy and I'm like, okay guys, it's like, it's cool to hear a guy say it, but I think it's interesting to hear a woman's take on how they would experience it, even though every woman experiences it differently.
Yeah. So actually, commenting back to what you said about a man and woman being a good team, I actually see it to be masculine, feminine energies. So I think I see a lot of things personally in the sense of energies. So, that's why I think if you're a feminine resonating individual, then when you're searching for like a masculine, or you want to be partnered and balanced with that masculine energy. And if a person is coming to you like needing or wanting and trying to get something from you, it's not a penetrating energy in the sense of you want something that's going to come after you, powerful, but not so much that they desperately need you, but it's like more so that they're offering to you. So to better explain that, as a woman, I don't want neediness, because then it makes me feel actually threatened, because I'm like, oh my gosh, if I do something and like I turn him off, what's going to happen then? This is just my personal perspective on it.
How many of you in this room could honestly say that a truly giving, value-offering energy is emanating from you? Put your hands up if you feel that you're there yet. Yeah, it takes time to develop a truly value-offering energy. But let me even go deeper. When you meet that one person that you really like, even then, are you going to really maintain that? Even if you were that way for 10,000 other people, it's going to mess your swag up. Okay? It's like, the NBA Finals Game 7? Those aren't usually good games, right? I went to Game 7 when Kobe was playing Boston in LA in the Staples Center. I was so excited. I've never seen two more sloppy teams in my life, because they both had outcome dependence. They're both all wound up. They're actually not playing well. They probably play a lot better in games 1 and 2, or the earlier finals. They go all out. By the time it's Game 7, they're both nervous. Again, what we're thinking about here, what is it? I want to get you into the mind of what it feels like as a woman to feel a value-taking energy versus a value-giving energy, and just going deeper on that platform. Do you have any? Yeah?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if a guy is approaching a girl, you don't necessarily need a reaction from her, because in the idea of abundance, there's so many girls out there, and you might think like, oh my gosh, this person is meeting all the needs that I want, and they're exactly what I envisioned, and you think like, I'm never going to meet another person like that again. But the truth is, you are, or it's like you'll reconfigure, because we're always evolving, we're always changing. What you think you might want like a year ago, you actually will change. You're going to want something else in the future, and then you're always going to keep growing. So you want to find a person who's going to grow along with you, and who's not going to reject you in the state that you are now, because the idea is you want to see the potential in someone. You also want to see them where they're at now. Definitely don't discredit if they're like having red flags. Take that into serious consideration, but also see the potential of what something could be. But if they're not accepting it, don't go after them. Don't become desperate, because you have to come from that centeredness and that value of yourself. And some people might say, oh, it's selfish of you to like see yourself as this like high value, high quality person. But if you put the work and time into it, you're investing into yourself, and you want a high return. And that high return is that self-love, that self-value.
Now, you can see how when you meet somebody and they seem extremely special, or you really want to meet them, it's very exciting, right? Say that you're out in a bar or club and you meet somebody who's at a whole other level. It's very, very exciting. So I can remember when I was in my early 20s, I would meet somebody out who I really liked, and they would maybe go to the bathroom, right? Now, at first, I'm sitting there, I'm in the venue, I'm talking to everybody, I'm having fun. Then I meet the person I really like. Then they say I've got to go to the bathroom. And what I would always do when I was younger, is I'd sit there waiting for them when they went to the bathroom. Then they'd come back, and what I always noticed was that they had lost attraction because I'm waiting. Now, this is a little bit paradoxical, because you like that one person so much, you don't want to go talk to other people. But what I found was it was a lot better for me to go and just start chatting with other people, and I would just have to accept that if I bumped into the one that I like again, then I'm fine. But if I don't bump into the one that I like again, I have to accept the loss. And in effect, what I'm doing there is, as you're speaking with other people, you're building your foundation. Because what you're doing is you're having good energy inside yourself, you're sharing good energy, It's awesome, okay? You're building that positive foundation right there. But it also means that you may lose that person. And that's depressing, especially if you meet someone you really like. So from that standpoint, what do? Where's the middle ground? Well, here's what it is. Just go meet other people, go have fun, and if you bump into them again, you bump into them again. But here's what you don't want to do. The last thing that you want to do is get to a point where you're always scanning for the other person. Do not value scan. Repeat after me. Do not value scan. And what I mean by that is your reticular activation system will start zoning in on the other person, and what will wind up happening is that you're so zoned in on them that you've lost that sense of being the hero in your own movie. Once you're no longer the hero of your journey, and you've lost that self-love, and your foundation is in the other person, your point of orientation moves into them. Now, once you've done that, sexual chemistry gets messed up, and then the reticular activation system gets thrown off, and they will start zeroing in on the 1 or 2 or 3 things wrong with you instead of everything you have going for you, and they will loop on it, just like the example that we gave earlier about right after you hooked up, you do the same thing. So to avoid that issue, you've got to be building this, and you've got to truly understand on a deep level a combination of things. One is that you want to set up your life in a way that makes sense, your passions, your hobbies, your purpose, but also there's an inner spiritual component to it, right? Her and I talked about this the other day. It was actually a very powerful conversation. It's a little bit of a weird conversation talking about spiritual growth. It's very subjective and personal. Would you want her to share a couple of those ideas, even if it's a bit subjective and personal? Yeah. Okay, maybe some ideas on that. You can get a little weird. Okay, we have the realm of objective, and then we have the realm of subjective, okay? So objective is like, if you do this and this, we've seen in this many test cases, it produced this result. We tested it. Then there's things that are subjective, which is more in your inner world. Sadly, that's a little bit harder to test. It's harder to do like a Harvard test, like if you are in the now, do you feel the high vibration? And right, that's very difficult to test. But there's a lot of people that really get it, and to me, I just use the eyeball test. I look at them, their character, their behavior, and I get a sense of where they're coming from. And just by looking at it, I want to hear their perspective on it. So I know you have a lot of perspective. Yeah. Also, I'm going to test you on something. I'm going to show you a couple things. Okay, go. Okay, I do this with everybody, okay? Okay, I'm going to go, okay, just try yelling like that.
Just like that?
Yeah, just like, in whatever, in your own version of it. You're a woman, your own version. Okay, try that. Okay, you're salty. I'm going to do it with you, okay? Okay, now right after I stopped, you stopped? After I stopped, keep going, okay? Okay, you stopped, right? Yeah, okay, I'm gonna do, okay, so again, you gotta, because what's happening is I'm giving you the permission, okay, but I want you to mentally click in to give yourself the permission, okay? Okay, I'll do it with you, okay?
How long do I have to keep going?
Just within common sense, not like you have to go for 98 minutes, okay? Like Derek will walk in later, this girl's at the front like, ah! He's like, Owen got her going, right? So, okay, so I'm gonna do it with you, okay? I'm gonna go, Okay, give her a hand for that, that's very good. Okay, you can give that.
So, like Owen said, I definitely have my own conceptions about spirituality. And coming from an artist background, I paint, and definitely spirituality inspires a lot of the things that I create. So my understanding of it is that we're all united. So all of us, we come from one being, this one source energy. And really, this one source energy creates everything, because energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can just be transferred. So I think that us as humans, we're just this energy made manifest in this expression, this human form. And the same thing, it's like, how many of you, if you go into nature, you feel super connected, super grounded, like just like super zen? Raise your hand if that's the case. So that's, I believe, us coming back to where we belong, us coming back to our true nature, and that's just energy. Because even though we see all of this around us, it's once again our mental energy being created into this physical environment. You know, it's just that transfer of energy via ideas. So with, let's say, this energy, I think it's also expressed in different physical forms, like the masculine, the feminine, and coming together, there's a balance, and within that balance, it's the idea of, let me just try to formulate this. I think that this great being, I call it God. So within that respect, there are different ideas of how this is to be recognized, and there are different divisions, different subsets. When you function from this reality of realization that, you know what, I am just this expression, you hold no attachment to anything in the physical world. Like, you hold no attachment to the chair, you don't hold any attachment to your job. And the reason being is not because you don't find value with it, it's just because you know it's a transient passage of time. You're not necessarily within this, stuck in this zone, because you're always moving, you're always in transition. And who knows, maybe in the next form you'll be transferred over into a different type of energy. Does that make sense anyway? Does anyone have any questions? But, thank you.
Now, by the way, where this comes in terms of like how this plays out, I noticed that as I began to take on a lot of those ways of thinking and ways of being, for me, a lot of the things that you guys deal with, I used to also deal with, but a lot worse. Probably a lot worse than what a lot of you guys deal with. And so I would see for many years, people will go out and they go to try to talk to people, and maybe they get a little rejection, and then they freak out. Or maybe they try to get a new job, and they don't get it, and they freak out. And there's all these things that we get attached onto, and when we don't get it, we freak out. So the issue there is that as we're freaking out, it robs us of power. We can't bring our full power to bear into that situation. We don't have access to all of our faculties. Now, everybody in here has had dreams, right? Everybody? You've had it where you had a dream. And how creative were you in your dream? Super. Very creative, right? So that is the degree to which you are creative. And yet you sit there, maybe you walk up to someone you want to talk to, and you can't even think of what to say for a sentence or 5 sentences, and yet you had dreams like that? Well, what's happening? What's happening is you don't have access to all your faculties. We call this the control muscle and the release muscle. Control and release. So in modern society, we're very much geared and conditioned to get attached to very specific outcomes, most of which we can't get because they're not in reach immediately. And then what happens, we try to control it, it robs us the power. Now if you walk up to somebody, you can barely even communicate because of the fact that all your power is robbed from you. So the perspective that she just talked about there, those were the kind of perspectives that helped me to get out of that, to where when I go out, it's almost like a ballet dance. I'm just talking to people. I mean, wouldn't that be cool if it was a real ballet dance? But anyway, okay. I'm just talking to people. I'm having fun with people. It's not hard for me to come up with what to say. It's all very simple. When I do a speech, I could just let it come to me. I don't need to have everything prepared because I let go, and my mind can kind of just create the speech. Brandon, what's up, man? And my mind, hey, let me get Brandon to come up here too. Guys, give a hand to my buddy Brandon. He's one of the best fitness trainers in the world. What's up, man? What's up, dude? Thanks for making it, bro. It's awesome to see you, man.
How you doing?
Good. This is Anna. Anna, this is Brandon. Yeah. There's a lot of good people here today, guys. But I'd love for you to finish a little bit of your point about centeredness and the space that you're coming from as far as what can help somebody to feel free and to share freely, not to be nervous or attached.
Yeah. So within that, it's like the idea of spirituality, it's all this energy source, but then we're living in a physical world, so we have to apply it into a physical world. So for myself personally, how I got to accomplish this was just to realize, and really, meditation, huge factor. And what I meditate on is the idea that, you know what, this is all passing and this is all transient. And I'm coming from within, so I'm contributing to the world. Because when you come with the mentality and thought process of, you know what, I'm offering something, you're no longer powerless. Because even if, let's say, you offer but you get rejected, you still have that to give to someone else who can then utilize it and grow something greater from that. So you have to just find the right soil, let's say, you know. And sometimes you just have to keep trying and trying, but you're not going to get desperate because you're coming from an infinite source, because energy is ever expanding. So you're never going to be like fully controlled or, let's say, denied, you know? You're always growing.
Can you guys see why that's important for when you go out? Yeah. Okay, that's the space that I found really helped me the most, so I wanted to have some other people to come share it. Could you guys give a hand to Anna? She really contributes something powerful here.